A poor trash collector finds a drunk millionaire in the garbage and takes him home, but what he did surprised everyone. Before we begin the story, let us know in the comments, what city are you watching from? And when it's over, don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10. Maya was riding her bike, pulling her rusty cart through the narrow alleys of the neighborhood. Her worn-out sneakers made a wet sponge sound with every step. She knew every corner, every trash can. But that night felt different. As she turned the corner, she nearly fell off her bike. There, lying among torn trash bags and soaked cardboard boxes, was a man completely passed out. The suit he was wearing was expensive, she could tell even in the rain. One sleeve was completely ripped and his face was dirty. "Oh my God," Maya whispered, dropping her bike. For a moment, she thought about moving on. Drunk men sleeping on the street weren't unusual in her world. But there was something different about this one. Maybe it was the quality of the fabric, or the golden shine she noticed on his wrist, or maybe it was just that motherly instinct her grandmother always said women carry in their hearts. She stepped closer, her heart pounding. What if it was a trap? What if he was dangerous? What if? Then she saw the blood. A dark stain was running down from his forehead, mixing with the rainwater. His chest was rising and falling with uneven breaths. "Hey, sir," Maya shouted, kneeling beside him. "Sir, are you okay?" "Nothing." She touched his shoulder gently, then with more pressure. The man groaned softly, but didn't open his eyes. Maya looked around. The street was empty, just the sound of rain and some distant music coming from a bar still open. With great effort, she managed to roll him onto his side. She noticed he was handsome. His features were fine, his skin was light, and his brown hair stuck to his wet forehead. "What is that smell?" she mumbled to herself, wrinkling her nose. "Whiskey. Expensive whiskey, the kind that cost more than she made in a whole month collecting trash." Maya bit her lip, unsure. Her home was a small shack made of wood and covered with a plastic tarp. It didn't even have a proper bathroom. How could she take a stranger there? What if he was a criminal? What if? Another clap of thunder interrupted her thoughts. The rain was getting heavier, and the man had started to shiver. If she left him there, he'd freeze to death before morning. All right, she told herself like she needed convincing. Just until he wakes up. With a strength she didn't know she had, Maya managed to drag the man onto her cart. He was heavier than he looked, and she almost fell trying to lift him. When she finally got him in among the bags of recyclable trash, he mumbled something unclear. "No, please." Maya shook her head, not understanding. She was only helping him through the storm. In the morning, he'd be on his way. Struggling, she pedaled back toward the slum where she had lived since she was a child. The cart's wheels made a loud noise on the wet pavement, and the man let out small groans with each bump. 20 minutes later, they reached her shack. It was a humble place. Plywood walls, a patched-up blue tarp roof, and a door that didn't quite close. But it was the only place in the world she could call home. With great effort, she managed to bring the man inside and lay him down on the only mattress she had, a thin, yellowed foam, one she had found in the trash months earlier. The light from a candle lit up his face clearly for the first time. Maya held her breath. He was even more handsome than she had thought. And there was something about him, something that didn't match being tossed out like a homeless person. His nails were clean, his teeth perfect, and even dirty and bruised. He had an air of nobility. "Who are you?" she whispered, wiping the blood from his face with a damp cloth. Then, when she opened his shirt to check for more injuries, Maya saw something that made her swallow hard. Tattooed on his chest, right above the heart, was a detailed image. A fancy crest with a golden eagle surrounded by Latin words she couldn't read. But it wasn't just any tattoo. It was the kind only very, very rich people would have. Maya stepped back, her heart racing. Who was this man? Maya spent the whole night watching the stranger breathe. Each time he groaned, she jumped, wondering if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. But when the first rays of sunlight peeped through the cracks in her wooden wall, something changed. His eyes slowly opened. They were blue. Blue like the sky she had seen on postcards from the tourist city, not the polluted gray she knew from the slum. Where am I?" he murmured, trying to sit up and raising a hand to his forehead with a grimace of pain. Maya quickly stood up from the floor where she had slept, smoothing out her worn dress. "You're in my home. I found you in the trash last night. You were badly hurt." He looked around, confused. His eyes passed over the peeling walls, the tarp ceiling, the single broken chair she owned. Then he looked at Maya, and she saw something strange in his expression. It wasn't disgust or contempt like she expected. It was emptiness. I don't remember anything." His voice was hoarse. "How did I end up in the trash?" Maya stepped closer, slowly, like he was a wounded animal. "You really don't remember anything? Not even your name?" He shut his eyes tight, like he was trying to force the memories to come back. When he opened them again, there was panic in them. "No, I don't remember anything. Absolutely nothing." He touched his forehead, where there was still a fresh cut. "My God, what happened to me?" Maya bit her lip. She had seen movies on her neighbor's old TV about people losing their memory after a blow to the head, but she never thought that really happened. Maybe you were robbed," she suggested. "You didn't have a wallet or a phone when I found you, just those expensive clothes." He looked at the wrinkled, dirty suit he was still wearing, as if seeing it for the first time. "Expensive?" he repeated, confused. "Very expensive. It's silk, isn't it? I can tell because I've picked clothes like that out of the trash in rich neighborhoods." Maya blushed, realizing she had just revealed her job. I collect recyclable materials to sell." But instead of the judgment she expected, he simply nodded. "You saved my life, didn't you?" The simplicity of the question caught her off guard. I just couldn't leave you there. It was raining hard." They were quiet for a moment. Maya didn't know what to do. She had never been alone at home with a strange man, especially one who clearly came from a different world. "What's your name?" she asked at last. He closed his eyes again, concentrating. I don't know. I can't remember." The frustration in his voice was clear. "And you?" "Maya Herrera." "Maya." He repeated the name slowly, as if testing the sound. "That's a beautiful name." Maya felt her face grow warm. No one had ever said her name was beautiful before. "You need a name too," she said, trying to change the subject. "I can't just keep calling you all the time." He smiled for the first time, and Maya felt her heart skip a beat. Even hurt and dirty, that smile lit up his face in a way she'd never seen. "What name would you suggest?" Maya thought for a moment. She remembered the fairy tales her grandmother used to tell when she was little. Stories about handsome princes rescuing damsels in distress. Ironically, this time she was the one who saved the prince. "William," she said suddenly. "You look like a William." He tried out the name, moving his lips silently. "William. I like the sound of it. William." He looked at her with those deep blue eyes. "Thank you, Maya, for everything." The sincerity in his voice touched her deeply. Maya was used to being invisible, ignored, treated like trash by the people in the city. But William looked at her like she mattered. "Are you hungry?" she asked, getting up. "I don't have much, but I can make some scrambled eggs." Scrambled eggs sound perfect. As Maya cooked breakfast on the makeshift stove, William tried to make sense of his situation. He couldn't remember anything. Not his name, not his family, not where he came from. It was as if his life had started in that very moment, in that simple shack, with that kind woman who had saved him. But there was something else. Strange flashes crossed his mind, blurry images of fancy offices, men in suits talking about numbers he didn't understand, a constant feeling of pressure and stress. "William?" Maya's gentle voice brought him back to the present. "Are you okay? You look worried." Just trying to remember, but it's like there's a wall in my head." Maya sat beside him on the mattress, offering a plate of scrambled eggs and homemade tortillas. "Maybe it's for the best," she said softly. "Maybe your mind is protecting you from something bad that happened." William looked at her with admiration. How could someone living in such hard conditions have so much wisdom and kindness? "Maya," he said suddenly, "I don't know who I was before, but I do know I want to be a better person from now on. Someone who deserves the kindness you showed me." Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. And it was in that moment, while they shared a simple meal in a humble shack, that something special began to grow between them. Something that would change their lives forever. But outside, on the city streets, men in suits were desperately searching for someone who had vanished. and when they found him, nothing would ever be the same again. It had been a week since Maya found William in the trash, and both their lives had completely changed. William hadn't regained a single piece of his memory, but something unexpected was happening. He was happy. For the first time in his life, even without remembering the past, he felt a peace he couldn't explain. "Maya, are you sure it's okay for me to come with you today?" William asked, adjusting the borrowed shirt Maya had gotten from a neighbor. It was simple, nothing like the expensive suit he was found in, but he looked comfortable. "Of course it's okay," Maya replied, tying her worn-out shoes. "You said you wanted to help, so you're going to help. But I'm warning you, it's not easy." William smiled. Over the past few days, he had insisted on going with Maya to work. At first, she hesitated, ashamed of how she made a living, but William never showed any judgment. On the contrary, he seemed truly interested in learning. They headed out together, Maya pushing her bike with the rusty cart, William walking beside her. The morning sun was already strong, typical of Mexico's hot weather. "We'll start with the restaurant street," Maya explained. "They throw out a lot of stuff that's still good, clean cardboard, glass bottles, sometimes even decent food." William took it all in. The narrow city streets, street vendors shouting about their goods, barefoot children running around, skinny dogs searching for scraps. It was a completely different world, but it stirred something deep inside him. "Maya," he said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you help me that night?" "You didn't know me. It could have been dangerous." Maya stopped pushing the bike and looked at him. There was a sincerity in William's blue eyes that gave her butterflies. "My grandmother always said helping someone in need is like helping yourself. That kindness always finds its way back to you," she shrugged. "Besides, you looked lost, kind of how I feel sometimes." William felt his chest tighten. How could someone so special feel lost? "You're never lost, Maya. You're the strongest person I know." "Strong?" Maya laughed, but her eyes sparkled. "I pick through trash to survive, William. There's nothing strong about that." "There is." William stood in front of her, making her look into his eyes. "You work honestly, take care of yourself, help strangers. That's more noble than anything I can imagine." Maya felt her face warm up. No one had ever spoken to her like that. On the streets, she was invisible. At church, she was the poor girl. To the rich, just another scavenger. But William made her feel like she mattered. "Let's get to work," she mumbled, trying to hide her smile. They spent the morning together, with Maya teaching William how to sort recyclable materials. He picked it up quickly, but what impressed her most was his attitude. William didn't complain about the smell, the mess, or the hard work. On the contrary, he seemed determined to help however he could. "This glass is cracked," William said, holding up a bottle. "Is it still usable?" "Sure is. They melt everything down anyway." Maya smiled. "You're learning fast. I've got a good teacher." That simple comment made Maya's heart race. There was something in the way William looked at her that made her feel beautiful, even in old clothes and with dirty hands. At lunchtime, they sat under a tree, sharing the tortillas Maya had made. William watched people passing by, workers heading home, kids playing in the street, vendors offering their goods. "It's strange," he said suddenly. "What is? I don't remember anything from my past life, but I feel like I've never been this happy before." Maya looked at him, surprised. "Happy? Picking through trash and sleeping on a mattress on the floor?" "Happy to be with you." The words came out naturally, without filters. William was surprised by his own honesty, but he didn't regret it. It was the truth. Maya felt the world around her come to a stop. The noise from the street, the voices, the traffic, all of it disappeared. There was only William, and those blue eyes looking at her with a gentleness she had never known. "William," she began, but didn't know what to say. He walked up slowly, giving her space. "Maya, I know I don't remember my past, but I do know my future has to be with you. But you don't know who you are, where you're from. What if you have a family? What if you're married?" William looked down at his hands. No ring, no sign of one. "I don't know who I was before, but I know who I want to be now. I want to be the man who deserves your love." Tears filled Maya's eyes. Her whole life, she had dreamed of meeting someone who truly saw her, who loved her for who she was. But she always thought it was impossible. Who would fall for a garbage collector? I'm falling for you too, she whispered. William smiled, and it felt like the sun got a little brighter. Then let's build a life together. It doesn't matter who I was. What matters is who we are now. They kissed right there under the tree, in the middle of a busy street. It was a sweet kiss, full of hope and promise. But as they kissed, William felt something strange. A flash, like lightning in his mind. A boardroom, men yelling, numbers on a screen, a heavy pressure in his chest. He pulled away suddenly, holding his head. What is it? Maya asked, worried. I'm not sure. It was just a strange image. It passed really fast. Maya took his hand. Maybe your memory's starting to come back? That's what doctors on TV always say. William nodded, but something inside him felt uneasy. What if his past was something awful? What if he had been a bad person? What if remembering everything meant losing Maya? But when he looked at her, he knew it didn't matter. Whatever his past had been, Maya was his present and hopefully his future. Meanwhile, across town in a fancy office, angry men shouted into their phones, "Find Alexander Sterling! Now! The company's losing millions every day he's gone." 2 weeks had passed since the kiss under the tree, and Maya had never been happier. William had fully embraced their simple life. In the mornings, they collected recyclables together. In the afternoons, he helped her sort and clean everything. At night, they talked about dreams and plans while lying on their one mattress. Maya had fallen deeply in love. William was kind, hardworking, and treated her like she was the most precious woman in the world. He never complained about the simple food, the cold showers in the shared bathroom, or the thin walls that let in every sound from outside. Maya, William said that Tuesday afternoon as they stacked glass bottles in the cart, I've been thinking about finding a real job. A real job, Maya laughed. And what do you think we're doing, playing around? No, that's not what I meant. William smiled and kissed her forehead. I mean a job with steady pay, so we can rent a better place, maybe even get you a real bed. Maya felt her heart warm. Even without his memory, William dreamed of giving her a better life. We'll make it, she said, touching his face. Together, we can do anything. That night, they went to bed early. Maya fell asleep quickly, tired from the long day. But William stayed awake, staring at the canvas roof swaying in the wind. Lately, the memory flashes were coming more often and more clearly. Images of luxurious offices, men in suits arguing over contracts, expensive cars, and huge houses. But every time he tried to focus, a terrible headache would hit. And then, it happened. Like a tsunami, all the memories came back at once. Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries, billionaire, son of a traditional Mexican family that had built a business empire. The memories hit like a flood. Endless meetings, constant pressure from investors, the loneliness of a life lived only for work, a fancy but empty apartment, shallow relationships with women who only cared about his money. And then the last memory before the accident, a furious fight with Ricardo Mendoza, his business partner and childhood best friend. You're destroying everything we built, Ricardo shouted. Your reckless decisions are sinking the company. They're my decisions to make, Alexander had yelled, slamming his fist on the table. I built this company. We built it together, and I won't let you ruin what we worked so hard for. The argument had been brutal. Alexander had stormed out, driven to the nearest bar, and drank until he couldn't think anymore. After that, just darkness, until he woke up in Maya's arms. Alexander, no, William, sat up suddenly on the mattress, heart racing. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead as his whole past life came rushing back like an avalanche. He looked at Maya, still asleep beside him, so peaceful and beautiful, and felt his world collapse. He wasn't William, the simple man she loved. He was Alexander Sterling, one of the richest men in Mexico, living in a world completely different from hers. How could he tell her the truth? How could he explain that he had lied, even if he hadn't meant to? But worse, how could he keep living this lie, now that he knew who he really was? Alexander got up carefully, not wanting to wake Maya, and stepped outside the shack. The early morning air hit his face, but it did nothing to calm the storm in his mind. He had a company to run, employees who depended on him, million-dollar contracts waiting for his signature, responsibilities he couldn't just walk away from. But he also had Maya. Maya, who loved him for the man he had become while with her. Maya, who had shown him the true meaning of happiness. Alexander spent hours walking through the empty streets of the slum, torn inside. When the sun began to rise, he had made a decision. He couldn't tell Maya the truth. Not yet. First, he had to sort out his situation, find out what had happened with the company, deal with Ricardo. Then, he would come back to her with a plan. He returned to the shack quietly. Maya was still asleep. Alexander stood there for several minutes, memorizing every detail of her face. Then, he took a piece of paper and wrote a letter. Maya, I had to go. I can't explain right now, but I promise I'll come back. You changed my life in a way I never thought possible. I love you more than words can say. Wait for me, William. He left the note beside her and walked away, heartbroken. Maya woke up 2 hours later, reaching for William with her hands. When she realized he wasn't there, she sat up, worried. William? She called. Silence. Then she saw the letter. Her hands trembled as she read the words that shattered her world. No, she whispered, clutching the paper to her chest. He was gone. No explanation, no warning, just a vague promise that he would return. Maya cried harder than she ever had before. She felt used, abandoned, foolish for believing that someone like William could truly love her. On the other side of the city, Alexander Sterling walked into his mansion for the first time in 3 weeks. Everything was just as he had left it. Luxurious, perfect, and completely empty. His butler, Carlos, nearly fainted when he saw him. Mr. Alexander, dear God, where have you been? Everyone's been looking for you. The company, the investors, your partner Ricardo is desperate. Where's my phone? Alexander asked, ignoring the questions. In your office, sir. But sir, what happened? You disappeared without a trace. Alexander didn't answer. He went upstairs, took a long shower, and dressed in one of his expensive suits. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. 3 weeks ago, he had been Alexander Sterling, the cold, calculating CEO. In the last few weeks, he had been William, a man who discovered true love. Now, he didn't know who he was anymore. The phone rang nonstop. Ricardo. Alexander, for God's sake, where have you been? The company's in chaos. The investors are furious. We've missed meetings, lost contracts. I had an accident. I lost my memory for a while. Accident? What accident? We searched every hospital for you. Alexander closed his eyes. How could he explain he had spent 3 weeks living as a garbage collector and falling in love with a wonderful woman? It doesn't matter now. I'm coming to the office. Alexander, wait. We need to talk first, about our argument that night. Alexander hung up. He wasn't ready to deal with Ricardo yet. 2 hours later, he was in his office at the top floor of the tallest building in the city. Through the huge windows, he could see the city stretching to the horizon. Somewhere down there was Maya, crying over his departure. His assistant brought in stacks of documents to sign, emails to reply to, meetings to reschedule. Alexander looked at it all and felt deeply nauseous. How had he ever thought this was important? Mr. Sterling? His assistant looked at him concerned. Are you okay? I'm fine, Alexander lied. Just leave everything here. I'll be working late. But once he was alone, Alexander couldn't focus on anything. Every document reminded him of how happy he had been collecting trash with Maya. Every scheduled meeting made him think of the simple meals they had shared under the tree. He had returned to his world, but he had left his heart behind. And Maya? Maya was alone in her shack, holding the letter and wondering how she could have been so foolish to believe that someone could truly love her. Neither of them knew that this separation was just the beginning of a much more complicated story. A story filled with betrayal, revenge, and a love that would have to overcome unimaginable obstacles. 2 months had passed since William vanished from Maya's life. 2 months of pain, tears, and a constant feeling of emptiness in her chest. Maya tried to stick to her usual routine, collecting recyclables, selling what she could, surviving one day at a time. But nothing felt the same. Every corner of the city reminded her of him. Every tree where they had rested together felt like a stab to the heart. She had convinced herself that William must be dead, because it was the only explanation that made sense for his sudden disappearance without a word. That Thursday morning, Maya was pushing her cart down the main avenue when something on a store's TV caught her attention. On the screen, a man in a suit was giving an interview on a news program. Maya stopped pushing the cart, her heart racing. It was William. But it wasn't William. The man on the TV had the same face, the same blue eyes, but he looked completely different. He wore an expensive suit, his hair was neatly combed back, and he spoke with a kind of authority she had never seen before. Sterling Industries is resuming its expansion projects after my brief medical leave, he told the reporter. Maya walked closer to the window, her legs shaking. At the bottom of the screen, a name appeared. Alexander Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries. "No, it can't be," she whispered, placing her hand on the glass. "That's him, the richest man in the city," said a woman who was also watching. "They say he disappeared for weeks, and no one knew where he was." The world spun around Maya. William, Alexander, he was a billionaire, and he left her behind to return to his life of luxury? Tears started rolling down her face. Everything had been a lie. He had never lost his memory. He was probably just having fun, pretending to be poor, laughing at her for being so naive. Maya ran home, leaving the cart behind in the street. She got to her shack and collapsed onto the mattress where they had once slept together, crying until she had no more tears left. 3 days later, Maya was at the junkyard selling the recyclables she had collected when a black, luxurious car pulled up in front of the place. She didn't pay much attention until she heard a familiar voice. "Maya." She turned slowly and felt her legs weaken. It was him, Alexander, wearing a suit that probably cost more than she made in a year, expensive sunglasses, and perfectly styled hair. "What do you want here?" she asked, her voice coming out weaker than she wished. Alexander removed his glasses, revealing the same blue eyes that once made her feel like the most loved woman in the world. Now, all she saw in them was coldness. "I need to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about." Maya turned away, trying to act like she didn't care. "Go away, Mr. Sterling." "Maya, please, give me 5 minutes." 5 minutes? Maya let out a bitter laugh. "You disappeared for 2 months without saying a word, and now you want 5 minutes? Alexander looked around. The junkyard owner and a few other customers were watching with curiosity. A wealthy man talking to a woman who collected garbage. It wasn't something you saw every day. "Can we talk in private?" "No. Whatever you have to say, you can say it right here." Alexander sighed. "All right, I came to offer you a job." Maya looked at him, confused. "A job?" "At Sterling Industries, an administrative position with good pay, full benefits. You'd have a dignified life, Maya." "Why?" Her voice was filled with distrust. "Why on earth would you offer me a job?" Alexander hesitated. The truth was he hadn't been able to stop thinking about her. For the past 2 months, he had tried to return to his normal life, but everything felt meaningless. The meetings, the business, the money, none of it mattered anymore. He had discovered what true happiness felt like, and it had been with Maya. "Because you deserve a better opportunity," he finally said. "A better opportunity?" Maya laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Or are you just feeling guilty for using me as a form of entertainment?" "I never used you, Maya." "No?" Her eyes sparkled with anger. "Then explain it to me, Alexander Sterling. Explain how a billionaire loses his memory and becomes a garbage picker. Explain how you suddenly remembered everything and disappeared without a single word." Alexander opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. How could he explain that everything had been real? That he truly had lost his memory? That the days he spent with her were the happiest of his entire life? "It's complicated," he murmured. "Complicated." Maya shook her head. "You know what's complicated, Alexander? A poor woman falling in love with a man she thought loved her, only to find out it was all a lie." "It wasn't a lie." Alexander took a step closer. "Maya, every moment we shared was real. Every word I said to you, I meant it." "Then why did you leave?" The simple question hit him like a punch. Alexander looked at Maya, her brown eyes filled with pain, her clothes plain but clean, her posture proud despite everything. Because I didn't know how to bring our 2 worlds together, mine and yours." "Oh, I see," Maya said with a bitter nod. "The rich millionaire couldn't stay with the trash collector. That would have been such a shame for your reputation." "That's not it." "Then what is it?" Maya crossed her arms. "Explain it to me, Alexander. Tell me why you left me like I was garbage." The word cut through Alexander like a blade. Seeing the pain in Maya's eyes, knowing he caused it, was almost too much to bear. "Maya, take the job, please. Let me help you." "Help me?" Maya laughed again. "You think you can buy back my dignity? That you can throw me crumbs to ease your guilt?" It's not crumbs, it's a real position with real responsibilities. Maya studied him for a long moment. Part of her wanted to scream, to curse him, to hurt him the way he had hurt her. But another part, the proud part her grandmother raised, wanted to prove she was worth more than he ever imagined. "All right," she said at last. "I'll take the job." Alexander looked surprised. "You will?" "But not out of pity. I'll work. I'll be the best employee you've ever had, and I'll prove that a trash collector can be better than any of your suit-wearing executives." "Maya, and let's be clear, this is business only. Don't ever bring up the past again. Don't try to get close to me. You made your choice when you walked away." Alexander nodded, his heart heavy. "I understand. When do I start?" "Monday. I'll send a car to pick you up." "No need for a car. I know how to take the bus." Alexander wanted to argue, but saw the determination in her eyes and stayed quiet. "See you Monday, then," he said, putting his glasses back on. "See you Monday, Mr. Sterling." Alexander walked back to the car, but before getting in, he looked back one last time. Maya had returned to work, sorting metal at the junkyard like nothing had happened. As the car pulled away, neither of them noticed they were being watched. Across the street, Ricardo Mendoza lowered his binoculars and smiled slyly. "So this is the little woman who made our Alexander disappear for 2 months," he muttered to himself. "Interesting. Very interesting." Ricardo had spent weeks trying to figure out where Alexander had gone during his absence. He had hired private investigators, bribed informants, turned the city upside down. And now, finally, he had found the answer. A trash collector. Alexander Sterling, the most powerful man in town, had fallen in love with a trash collector. Ricardo smiled coldly. He had clashed with Alexander over the direction of the company and had been planning a way to take control of Sterling Industries ever since. Alexander had always been more popular with investors, more charismatic. But now Ricardo had a weapon. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "Hello? Yes, it's me. I need you to look into a woman named Maya Herrera. I want every detail of her life, and I want to know exactly what happened between her and Alexander Sterling." Ricardo ended the call, still smiling. Alexander thought he could keep his personal life separate from business, but he was about to learn that in the world of the rich, nothing stays secret for long. And Maya, brave Maya, who had decided to accept the challenge, had no idea she was walking into a battlefield where she would be both the weapon and the target. Maya spent the weekend getting ready for her first day at Sterling Industries. She used her last bit of savings to buy a simple white blouse and a black skirt. Nothing fancy, but clean and decent. Looking into the cracked mirror in her shack, she took a deep breath. "You can do this," she told herself. "You'll show them all that Maya Herrera is worth something." On Monday, she arrived at Sterling Industries an hour early. The glass and steel building rose like a shining mountain in the center of the city, so different from the world she came from that Maya felt like an ant standing before a giant. "Maya Herrera?" asked the receptionist, an elegant middle-aged woman. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you." Maya was led to the 20th floor, where Alexander's office was located. When the elevator doors opened, she almost lost her breath. It was a luxurious space with soft carpets, expensive paintings on the walls, and an incredible view of the city. Alexander was waiting for her in his office, but he wasn't alone. A dark-haired man in his 40s, also dressed in an expensive suit, was sitting in one of the armchairs. "Maya," Alexander stood as she entered. "I'd like you to meet Ricardo Mendoza, my business partner and the company's vice president." Ricardo stood up with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Nice to meet you, Miss Herrera. Alexander told me you'll be our new administrative assistant." "Nice to meet you," Maya replied, shaking his hand. She noticed that Ricardo held it longer than necessary, studying her with calculating eyes. "Ricardo will explain your duties," Alexander said, avoiding eye contact with Maya. "I have a meeting in 5 minutes." Maya felt a wave of disappointment, but didn't show it. Alexander was making it clear this was strictly business. Ricardo led her to a smaller room, still luxurious compared to anywhere Maya had ever been. "Your job will be to organize reports, answer phones, schedule meetings," Ricardo explained. "Nothing too complicated. I'm sure a woman with experience like yours can adapt easily." There was something in the way he said experience that made Maya uncomfortable, but she ignored it. "Can I start now?" Of course, I'll give you some reports to review. They're about our construction projects downtown. Maya spent the morning reading the reports. To Ricardo's surprise, she not only understood everything, but asked smart questions and even made suggestions for improvement. "How did you learn about financial analysis?" he asked, clearly surprised. "My grandmother always said knowledge doesn't take up space," Maya replied. "I used to study at the public library whenever I could. I read books on economics, business, anything that could help me understand how the world works." Ricardo frowned. This woman was smarter than he had expected. That could be a problem for his plans. In the weeks that followed, Maya proved to be an outstanding employee. She arrived early, stayed late, and showed an impressive ability to learn quickly. Other employees started coming to her for advice on their projects, and she always had helpful ideas. Alexander watched everything from a distance, heart heavy. Seeing Maya every day but not being able to be close to her was torture. She was professional and polite with him, but treated him like any other boss, with respect but no warmth. "She's really standing out," Ricardo said one day, walking into Alexander's office, maybe too quickly. "What do you mean? A woman from the streets suddenly understanding our business better than trained executives? Don't you find that odd?" Alexander looked at Ricardo, annoyed. "Maya is smart. Just because she used to collect trash doesn't mean she's stupid." Of course. I'm just saying we should be careful. Sometimes people with questionable pasts may have hidden agendas." Alexander wanted to defend Maya, but he knew Ricardo was being deliberately provocative. A strong reaction would only confirm his partner's suspicions about their relationship. Meanwhile, Ricardo started putting his plan into motion. First, he began stealing Maya's ideas. When she suggested improvements in reports, he presented them as his own during meetings with investors. When she created more efficient spreadsheets, Ricardo copied them and presented them as his own innovations. Maya noticed, but said nothing at first. She needed the job and didn't want to cause problems. Then, Ricardo started planting false evidence. He changed files on Maya's computer, placed copies of confidential documents on her desk, and created fake emails under her name. The trap was carefully set over a month. On a rainy Thursday, Ricardo called an emergency meeting with Alexander and the board of directors. "Gentlemen," Ricardo said with a serious expression, "I've discovered something very serious. We have a spy in our company." Alexander frowned. "A spy?" "Confidential documents are being leaked to our competitors. Contracts we've lost recently, proposals that were copied, someone is selling our information." "Are you sure?" one of the board members asked. "Unfortunately, yes. And the most shocking part is the identity of the spy." Ricardo paused dramatically. "It's Maya Herrera." Alexander felt the blood drain from his face. "That's impossible." "I didn't want to believe it either," Ricardo said with a fake sigh. "But the evidence is undeniable." He threw a stack of papers on the table. There were copies of confidential documents with Maya's fingerprints, emails from her computer offering information to rival companies, and even photos of her meeting with people who looked like representatives from other firms, though in reality, they were just random street encounters taken out of context. "This is a setup." Alexander stood up, furious. "Alexander," Ricardo said calmly, "I understand you have feelings for this woman, but you can't let emotions get in the way of business." "Feelings?" one of the board members repeated. "What feelings?" Ricardo smiled to himself. "Well, everyone knows Alexander hired Miss Herrera for personal reasons. She was a trash collector with no qualifications." The room exploded with tension. The board members looked at each other in shock. "Alexander," said the oldest board member, "is this true?" Alexander was cornered. If he said yes, it would seem like Ricardo was right about his feelings clouding his judgment. If he said no, he'd be lying to the board. "Maya is a capable employee," he finally said. "Capable?" Ricardo laughed. "Alexander, this woman came out of nowhere. No references, no formal education, and within months, she had access to confidential information. And now we find out she's selling our secrets?" "Where's Maya?" Alexander asked. "She deserves the chance to defend herself." "She ran," Ricardo lied. "When I found out about the scheme, I tried to confront her, but she didn't show up for work today." In truth, Ricardo had told Maya that Alexander wanted to meet her at a company site across town, keeping her away during the meeting. "Gentlemen," Ricardo said, taking control of the room. "I propose that Alexander temporarily step down while we investigate the extent of the security breach. Clearly, his personal involvement with this woman has compromised his judgment." Alexander looked around the table. He could see doubt in everyone's eyes. Ricardo had played his hand perfectly. Not only had he set Maya up, but now he was using it to undermine Alexander's leadership. "This is ridiculous," Alexander said. "Maya is innocent, and you all know this company wouldn't run without me." "Alexander," the oldest board member said sadly, "maybe it's best if you take a few days to clear your head. Ricardo can step in for now." Alexander looked at Ricardo, who was trying hard to hide his smug grin. "Where is Maya right now?" Alexander asked. "As I said, she disappeared. Probably ran when she realized we found out," Ricardo replied. At that very moment, Maya was coming back from the supposed meeting at the construction site, unaware that her life was falling apart. When she arrived at Sterling Industries, she found security waiting for her. "Miss Herrera?" one of the guards said. "You've been dismissed. We need your badge, and you'll have to leave the building immediately." "Dismissed? Why?" "Orders from above. You're no longer allowed inside." Maya felt the world collapse again. Once more, she was being rejected, humiliated, thrown away like trash. But this time, she wasn't going to just accept it. Maya stood on the sidewalk in front of Sterling Industries, still in shock from being fired so suddenly, when Alexander came running out of the elevator. "Maya, wait," he called out, ignoring the curious stares from employees in the lobby. She turned around, her eyes full of anger and pain. "What do you want now, Alexander? Isn't it enough that I was humiliated? You want to rub it in my face too?" "I didn't fire you," Alexander said, out of breath. "It was Ricardo. He set the whole thing up." "Set up what?" Alexander looked around. Too many people were walking by. This wasn't the place for this kind of conversation. "Come with me. I need to explain everything." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Maya said, folding her arms. "Maya, please. You're being accused of corporate espionage. If we don't act, you could even go to jail." Maya's face went pale. "Espionage? What are you talking about?" "Ricardo presented fake evidence to the board, claiming you were leaking confidential information to our competitors." Maya's knees felt weak. "But that's a lie. I never." "I know it's a lie," Alexander said, gently touching her arm. "That's why I need your help to prove the truth." Maya looked him in the eyes, searching for signs that this was just another trick, another lie. But all she saw was sincerity and concern. "Why do you believe me?" she asked. "Your own partner showed you proof." "Because I know you, Maya. I know your character. I know how honest you are. You would never do something like this." For the first time in months, Maya saw a glimpse of the William she once loved, but she quickly remembered all the pain he had caused. "All right," she said finally. "But this doesn't change anything between us. I just want to clear my name." Alexander nodded, even though his heart sank. "I understand." They went to a nearby cafe where Alexander explained everything that had happened in the meeting. Maya listened quietly, her anger growing with every word. "So this Ricardo not only stole my ideas, now he's trying to destroy me?" she said when Alexander finished. "He wants to remove me from the company's leadership. He's using our past relationship to throw me off balance." "Our relationship," Maya said bitterly. "What relationship, Alexander? You left me, remember?" "Maya, about that. No." She raised her hand to stop him. "Let's not talk about the past. Let's focus on proving that Ricardo is a liar." Alexander wanted to explain everything, about the real memory loss, about how he had truly fallen in love with her, and how leaving her had been the hardest thing he'd ever done. But Maya was right. First, they had to deal with the current situation. "I need you to tell me everything you remember about Ricardo," Alexander said. "Anything odd he ever did or said." Maya thought for a moment. "He always asked strange questions about my past, and several times I caught him on my computer when I wasn't around." "Anything else?" Yes. Last week he asked me to stay late to finish a report, but when I came back the next day, the file was gone from my computer." Alexander frowned. "What kind of report?" "A financial analysis of our main competitors. He said it was for an important presentation." "Maya," Alexander leaned in, "that report never existed. We haven't had any competitor presentations in recent weeks." Maya's eyes widened. "So he made me create a fake report just to..." To have evidence that you were digging into our competitors, Alexander finished. He planned it all. In the days that followed, Alexander and Maya worked together to gather evidence against Ricardo. But it wasn't easy. They argued constantly. You can't just break into his office, Maya yelled when Alexander suggested checking Ricardo's computer. And how else are we going to prove he faked the evidence? Alexander snapped back, frustrated. Legally, the right way. Maya, while we sit here arguing, Ricardo is gaining more power in the company. He's already convinced half the board that I'm incompetent. And you think acting like a criminal is going to help your reputation? Their arguments were intense and frequent. Alexander was used to making quick decisions on his own, while Maya believed in doing things the ethical and well-thought-out way. You're so stubborn, Alexander said after another argument about how to approach an employee who might have information on Ricardo. And you're so impulsive, Maya replied. No wonder your company is falling apart. They stared at each other for a moment, both furious. But then Alexander saw tears in Maya's eyes. I'm sorry, he said, lowering his voice. I didn't mean that. It doesn't matter. Maya quickly wiped her eyes. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm just some trash collector who doesn't know anything about business. Maya, no. Alexander moved closer to her. You're the smartest person I know. Your ideas have saved several of the company's projects. I'm desperate to prove your innocence. Why? Maya asked, looking straight at him. Why is it so important to you? Alexander hesitated. This was the perfect chance to tell her the truth, about his feelings, about how he never stopped loving her, but he knew Maya wasn't ready to hear it. Because it's the right thing to do, he said at last. Maya nodded, but Alexander saw the disappointment in her eyes. 3 weeks later, they finally found a key lead. Carla, Ricardo's secretary, approached Maya quietly in a shopping mall. I shouldn't be doing this, Carla said nervously, but I can't stay silent anymore. What happened? Maya asked. Ricardo forced me to create fake documents with your signature. He said it was for a security test, but I knew it wasn't true. Maya's heart started to race. Do you have proof? I have copies of the original files before he changed them, and I have recordings of some conversations. Recordings. Carla opened her bag and showed a small recorder. Ricardo doesn't know, but I've been recording all the meetings for months. My ex-husband was a lawyer, and he taught me to protect myself at work. Maya almost cried with relief. They finally had real evidence. But when she went back to meet Alexander, she realized he wasn't where they had agreed to meet. Instead, she found a message on her phone. Maya, I found out where Ricardo keeps the files he used against you. I'm going to get them tonight. Don't look for me until I'm back. Maya felt a chill run through her. That idiot was doing exactly what she told him not to do, acting alone and impulsively. She rushed to the Sterling Industries building, but when she got there, she saw police cars at the entrance. What happened? She asked a security guard. Attempted break-in. They caught a man trying to break into one of the offices. Maya's heart sank. Alexander had been arrested. But even worse, when she saw Ricardo talking to the police, the smug smile on his face told her this had also been part of the plan. Ricardo had set a trap, and Alexander had walked right into it. Now Maya was alone, and the only evidence that could save them both was in the hands of a frightened secretary, while the man she loved, and yes, she finally admitted to herself that she still loved him, was being taken away by the police. The fight against Ricardo had become personal. And Maya Herrera, the former trash collector everyone had underestimated, was about to show what she was truly capable of. Maya spent the entire night pacing back and forth in her small shack, trying to figure out how to get Alexander out of jail. With every passing hour, Ricardo was tightening his grip on Sterling Industries, and their chances of proving the truth were slipping away. Early the next morning, she went to see Carla at the building entrance. Carla, I need those recordings now, Maya said, desperate. They arrested Alexander last night. I know, Carla looked around nervously. Ricardo's telling everyone that Alexander went crazy, that he tried to steal documents to blame others for his own mistakes. We know that's a lie. We do, but who's going to believe us? A secretary and a former trash picker against the new company president? Maya held Carla's shoulders. That's why we need the recordings. They're the only real proof we have. Carla hesitated. then sighed. All right, but not here. Ricardo has eyes and ears everywhere. Come to my apartment after work. That afternoon, Maya visited Alexander in jail. He looked worn down, with dark circles under his eyes and an unshaven face. I messed everything up, he said as Maya sat across the glass from him. Now Ricardo has really won. Not yet, Maya picked up the phone receiver. Carla has recordings that prove we're both innocent. We're going to expose Ricardo tonight. Alexander looked at her with admiration. Maya, it's dangerous. If Ricardo finds out you two have proof, leave it to me. I know how to take care of myself. I know you do. I always have. Alexander placed his hand on the glass. Maya, I need to tell you something about that night. Alexander, this isn't the time. It is. Because if something goes wrong tonight, you need to know the truth. He took a deep breath. I really did lose my memory that night. I wasn't faking it. I wasn't using you for fun. Maya felt her heart race. What? Ricardo and I had a big fight at the office. He said he was going to destroy me, that he deserved to be in charge of the company. I left furious and went out drinking. As I was leaving the bar, someone attacked me. I didn't get my memory back until 3 weeks later. Someone attacked you? Maya frowned. Did you see who it was? No, it was too dark. But now that I think about it, Alexander paused. That argument with Ricardo was intense. He was desperate to take over. Maya felt a chill. Do you think it was him? I'm not sure, but Maya, be careful tonight. Ricardo is more dangerous than we thought. That night, Maya met Carla at her small but cozy apartment. Carla had made coffee and sweet bread, but neither of them could eat because of how nervous they were. I've got everything here, Carla said, holding up a flash drive. Conversations where Ricardo admits to forging documents, recordings of him giving instructions on how to plant false evidence, and best of all, what? Carla smiled for the first time in weeks. A recording of him talking to someone named Joaquin, arranging the attack on Alexander that night 3 months ago. Maya nearly dropped her coffee cup. He really ordered someone to hurt Alexander? Listen to this. Carla played the recording. Ricardo's voice filled the apartment. Joaquin, the job was well done. Alexander was out of the picture for weeks, just like we needed. Now it's time for phase 2 of the plan. Phase 2? Joaquin's voice asked. I'm going to use that trash picker he got involved with to completely ruin his reputation. The board will hand me the presidency on a silver platter. Maya felt anger explode in her chest. That bastard planned everything from the start. There's more, Carla said, fast-forwarding the recording. What if that Maya woman finds out something? Joaquin asked. She won't. And if she does, she'll have an accident, just like Alexander almost did. Almost. That fool Alexander had to be tough. The blow to the head was supposed to be fatal, not just cause temporary memory loss. Maya and Carla looked at each other, horrified. Ricardo tried to kill Alexander? Maya whispered. And now he's threatening to do the same to me. Carla said, her hands trembling. Maya grabbed her friend's hand. We won't let that happen. Tomorrow morning, we're taking these recordings straight to the police. What if Ricardo finds out before we do? He won't. We'll make copies and hide them in different places. They spent the next hour copying the files and planning how to expose Ricardo. But while they talked, neither of them noticed the black car parked outside the building, or the man watching them through binoculars. Ricardo had been keeping surveillance on Carla for days, and now he knew exactly where the evidence that could destroy him was hidden. The next morning, Maya woke up to her phone ringing nonstop. It was an unknown number. Hello? Maya Herrera? The voice was rough and threatening. Who is this? Someone who has your friend Carla with me. Maya's blood turned cold. What did you do to her? Nothing, for now. That depends on you. I want all the recordings you and Carla have on Mr. Ricardo. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, miss. We know you spent last night copying files. Bring everything to the abandoned warehouse on Industrial Street, number 847, in 1 hour, and come alone. How do I know Carla's okay? Maya heard some noise, then Carla's scared voice. Maya, don't come. It's a trap. They're going to. The call ended. Maya sat on her bed, heart racing. She had a choice. Hand over the only evidence that could save Alexander and bring Ricardo down, or risk Carla's life. Then she had an idea. 1 hour later, Maya arrived at the abandoned warehouse. The place was dark, eerie, and filled with rusty machinery. Joaquin, a large, intimidating man, was waiting at the entrance. "Did you bring the recordings?" he asked. Maya held up a flash drive. "Where's Carla?" "She's inside. Give me the recordings first." Maya handed over the drive and Joaquin led her inside. Carla was tied to a chair, with a bandage on her face, but alive. "Carla, are you okay?" "Maya, you shouldn't have come," Carla cried. "How touching," said a familiar voice. Ricardo stepped out from the shadows, looking as elegant as always, but with a cruel smile on his face. "Ricardo, you coward," Maya said. "Why not deal with me directly?" "Because you've always been just a pawn in this game, dear Maya." He took the flash drive from Joaquin's hand. "Thanks for handing me the only evidence that could hurt me." "You really tried to kill Alexander?" Ricardo laughed. "Alexander was always so naive. He thought he could treat me like a junior partner, making all the big decisions on his own, but I built this company just as much as he did." "So you had him beaten." "The idea was to solve the problem permanently, but Alexander's always been lucky. He survived with amnesia. It was even fun watching him fall for a garbage collector." Maya felt pure rage flowing through her veins. "And now? Are you going to kill us too?" "Unfortunately, you know too much." Ricardo signaled to Joaquin. "Make it look like an accident. Maybe a fire." Joaquin walked toward Maya with a gasoline can, but she didn't flinch. "Ricardo," she said calmly, "you made a mistake." "What mistake?" Maya smiled. "You thought I'd come here alone." At that moment, the warehouse doors burst open. Armed police officers stormed in, shouting for everyone to get on the ground. "Police! Don't move!" Ricardo stared at Maya, stunned. "How?" "The flash drive I gave you only had music on it," Maya said as the police arrested Joaquin. "The real recordings were with the police early this morning." "Impossible. You wouldn't risk your friend's life." "I didn't. Carla called me before you took her, using the code we created last night. I knew it was a trap." The officer in charge walked up to Ricardo with handcuffs. "Ricardo Mendoza, you're under arrest for attempted murder, extortion, kidnapping, and corporate fraud." As Ricardo was being taken away, he shouted at Maya, "This isn't over. I'll get my revenge." But Maya just smiled. "It is over, Ricardo. Your own greed brought you down." 2 hours later, Alexander was released from jail. When he saw Maya waiting outside, he ran up and hugged her tightly. "How did you pull this off?" he asked. "With intelligence and courage," Maya replied. 2 things Ricardo always underestimated. Alexander looked her in the eyes. "Maya, about our conversation yesterday." "We'll talk about that later," she said. "Right now, you have a company to run." But deep down, Maya knew the hardest conversation was still ahead. A week had passed since Ricardo's arrest. Alexander was back in charge of Sterling Industries, and the whole city was talking about the scandal that rocked one of Mexico's biggest companies. The newspapers were full of headlines about corporate betrayal, attempted murder, and the bravery of a former trash picker who exposed it all. Maya had become a reluctant celebrity, and it made her uncomfortable. Reporters tried to interview her, photographers followed her around, and people stopped her for pictures. All she wanted was to go back to her simple life. Alexander tried to talk to her every day, but Maya always found an excuse to avoid him. She wasn't ready for the conversations she knew they had to have. That Tuesday, Maya was at the market buying vegetables when Alexander showed up. "Maya, we need to talk," he said firmly. "I'm busy," she replied, pretending to inspect some tomatoes. "You've been avoiding me for a week." "I'm not avoiding anyone." "Maya, look at me." She turned to him reluctantly. Alexander looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, like he hadn't slept in days. "We can't keep going like this," he said. "We need to work things out between us." "There's nothing to work out, Alexander. You go back to your world, I go back to mine. End of story." "It's not that simple." "Sure it is." Maya grabbed her shopping bag. "You're a billionaire, I'm a trash picker. You live in a mansion, I live in a shack. You're educated, I barely finished high school. We're from 2 different worlds." "That doesn't matter." "It does." Maya turned to him, her eyes shining. "It matters to your family, your friends, your employees. It matters to everyone. Except you." "No, Alexander. I'm tired of being your guilt, your charity case, your exotic adventure. I want someone who sees me as an equal, not someone who needs saving." Alexander felt her words like a slap in the face. "Is that really what you think? That you're just charity to me? Aren't I?" "Maya, you saved my company. You exposed Ricardo, got me out of prison, and proved you're braver and smarter than anyone I know. How can you think you're just a charity case?" Maya hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. "Pretty words don't change reality, Alexander." She started to walk away, but Alexander followed. "Then tell me what I have to do," he shouted, making people turn their heads. "Tell me what to do to prove I truly love you." Maya stopped and turned slowly. "You really want to know?" "I do. Leave me alone. Stop showing up. Stop looking for me. Go back to your world and forget about me." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because I love you," Alexander shouted again, not caring who was listening. "Because you're the only one who's ever made me feel whole. Because without you, nothing makes sense." Maya felt tears well up in her eyes but forced herself to stay strong. "Love isn't enough, Alexander. Then what is? Respect, trust, equality." Maya wiped away a tear. Things we're never going to have. Alexander stood there in the middle of the street, watching Maya walk away. People passed by, but he didn't notice. It felt like his world had fallen apart all over again. In the days that followed, Alexander tried to bury himself in work to forget the pain, but it was useless. Everything at the company reminded him of Maya, the office where she worked, the reports she wrote, the improvements she suggested. "Mr. Sterling?" His new assistant appeared at the door. "You have a meeting with the Japanese investors in 10 minutes. Alexander looked at her blankly. "Cancel it." "Sir?" "Cancel all my meetings today. Actually, cancel everything for the rest of the week." The assistant looked confused but didn't dare question him. Alexander left the office and drove aimlessly around the city. He eventually ended up outside the junkyard where he first found Maya after he got his memory back. The junkyard owner recognized him. "You're Maya's boyfriend, right?" "Ex-boyfriend," Alexander said bitterly. "Nonsense. You two love each other. Any fool can see that. Love's not enough." The old man chuckled. "Who told you that nonsense? Of course, love is enough. The problem is, you two are too proud to admit it." "It's not pride. It's reality. We come from different worlds." "So what?" The man stepped closer. "My wife was a rich farmer's daughter. I was a poor mechanic. We've been married 40 years. How did you make it work?" "We stopped focusing on our differences and started seeing what we had in common. We stopped trying to change each other and started growing together." Alexander looked thoughtful. "What if she doesn't forgive me?" "Then you don't give up. You show her you've changed. You prove you truly love her." "How?" The man smiled. "That's something you'll have to figure out on your own, son." That night, Alexander had an idea. He called his lawyer and requested a few specific documents. Then he called an architect and scheduled an urgent meeting. Meanwhile, Maya was at home, trying to sew a torn blouse by candlelight, but she couldn't focus. Her mind kept drifting to Alexander, how he had shouted that he loved her in the middle of the street, the sincerity she saw in his eyes. Maybe she had been too hard on him. Maybe? No, she couldn't think like that. She'd only end up getting hurt again. There was a knock at the door. Maya opened it and found Carla standing there with a strange look on her face. "Carla? What are you doing here so late?" "Maya, you need to see this." Carla held up a newspaper. "It's on the front page." Maya took the newspaper and nearly fell over when she read the headline, "Billionaire Alexander Sterling donates half his fortune to charity." "What?" Maya read through the article quickly. Alexander had donated 50% of his shares in Sterling Industries to a fund supporting poor families in the city. The rest would be split between himself and a social project he was creating. "But why would he do that?" Maya asked, confused. "There's more," Carla said, turning to the second page. "Read this." Maya read aloud. "Sterling also announced the creation of the Maya Herrera Foundation, an organization offering education and job training to recycling workers and their families. Maya Herrera taught me that a person's true worth isn't in their wealth, but in their character," Sterling said in an exclusive interview. Maya felt tears starting to fall. He named a foundation after me?" "Maya, don't you see?" Carla held her friend's hands. "He gave up half of everything he had to prove he truly loves you, to show you that you two can be equals." Maya shook her head. "That doesn't change anything. He's still rich, still powerful." "Maya," Carla gave her a light shake. "Stop being so stubborn. The man gave up billions for you. He didn't do it for me. He did it out of guilt." "Then why don't you go tell him that to his face?" Maya looked at Carla, then at the newspaper, then back again. Maybe I should. The next day, Maya went to Sterling Industries, but when she got there, she found out Alexander wasn't in. He left early and didn't say where he was going, the receptionist told her. Maya spent the whole day looking for Alexander. She went to his mansion, the restaurants he used to go to, even the bar where he'd been attacked months ago. Nothing. As the sun began to set, Maya returned home, tired and frustrated. But when she turned the corner onto her street, she froze. Alexander was there, sitting outside her shack, still in his suit, though his tie was loose and his hair a mess. He stood up when he saw her. "Maya, what are you doing here?" she asked, her heart pounding. "I've been waiting for you, 7 hours." "Why?" Alexander took a deep breath. "Because I need to tell you something. And this time, you're going to hear me out." Maya crossed her arms but didn't move away. "I'm listening." Alexander looked at Maya for a long moment, as if memorizing every detail of her face. Then, surprisingly, he took off his expensive jacket and dropped it on the dusty ground. "Maya, 3 months ago I was completely lost," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I was rich, powerful, but completely empty inside. I worked 16 hours a day, had no real friends, and didn't know what happiness felt like." Maya said nothing, but her eyes stayed locked on his. "Then I woke up in your arms, with no memory of who I was. And for the first time in my life, I learned what it meant to be loved for who I was, not for what I had." "Alexander, please, let me finish." He stepped closer. "You taught me how to work with my hands, how to share a simple meal, how to see beauty in small things. You showed me that a person's worth isn't in their bank account, but in the size of their heart." Maya felt tears sting her eyes, but she fought to keep them from falling. "When I got my memory back, I panicked," Alexander continued. "Not because I didn't love you, but because I loved you too much. I was scared you'd find out who I was and reject me. I was scared my world would hurt you. And that's why you left me? And that's why I made the biggest mistake of my life." Alexander lowered his head. "I thought going back to my old life would help me forget you. But every day without you was a living hell." Maya took a few steps toward him. "Alexander, I read about the foundation, about the money you donated. I didn't do that to impress you, Maya. I did it because you were right. We couldn't ever be truly equal while I had so much and you had so little. So I created that balance. But you're still wealthy. I am, and I always will be, at least when it comes to money. But you'll always be richer than me when it comes to wisdom, kindness, and courage." Alexander gently took her hands. "Maya, I don't want you to marry me in spite of our differences. I want you to marry me because of them. Together, we're stronger than we are apart." Maya looked at their hands, fingers intertwined. "Marry you?" Alexander dropped to one knee right there on the dirt in front of Maya's humble home, not caring about his expensive suit. "Maya Herrera, will you marry me?" Maya was speechless. "Alexander, get up. People are watching. I don't care." He pulled a simple ring from his pocket, not a flashy diamond, but a plain, beautiful gold band. "Maya, I love you. I love your strength, your intelligence, your big heart. I love how you challenge me and make me want to be a better man." Maya looked at the ring, then at Alexander on his knee, then at the neighbors who had stepped outside to witness the moment. "Alexander, stand up," she said, but now she was smiling through her tears. "Only if you say yes. Everyone's looking. Good. I want the whole world to know Alexander Sterling is madly in love with Maya Herrera, and he doesn't care who knows it." Maya laughed, finally letting the tears fall freely. "You're impossible. Is that a yes?" Maya looked at him. The man who had come into her life as a stranger in pain, who became her best friend, her love, who left and then came back willing to give up everything for her. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Alexander jumped to his feet and kissed her, as the neighbors clapped and shouted in celebration. It was a kiss full of promises, forgiveness, and true love. When they finally pulled apart, Maya laughed. "You're filthy." Alexander looked down at his suit, now covered in dirt. "I've never been happier to be dirty." 6 months later, the small church in the city center had never seen a wedding like this. Maya walked down the aisle arm in arm with her neighbor Joaquim, the blacksmith, who had become like a father to her. Her dress was simple but beautiful, bought from a local shop, and she had never felt more beautiful. Alexander stood at the altar in a modest suit, very different from the expensive ones he used to wear. Next to him was Carlos, his former butler who had become his closest friend after Alexander changed his life. The church was full. On one side, former employees of Sterling Industries, a few investors who respected Alexander, and curious reporters. On the other, Maya's entire community, trash collectors, local shop owners, street kids she always helped. It was exactly what Maya and Alexander had hoped for. Two worlds coming together. The priest, a simple man who had known Maya since she was a child, led the ceremony with words about true love and how differences can become strengths when there's mutual respect. Alexander, the priest said, do you take Maya to be your wife, to love her in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health? I do, Alexander said, looking directly into Maya's eyes, and I promise even more than that. I promise to always remind her that she's worth more than all the treasures in the world. Maya, do you take Alexander to be your husband, to love him in wealth and in poverty, in sickness and in health? Maya smiled through her tears. I do, and I promise to always remind him that true worth isn't about what we have, but who we are. Then, by the power given to me by God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Alexander and Maya kissed as the church erupted in applause. Trash collectors clapped alongside executives, street kids cheered with the city's elite. 2 years later, Maya was in the office of the Maya Herrera Foundation, going over reports about the families they had helped over the past year. More than 500 people had received job training, 200 had found good work, and 50 small businesses had been started with microloans from the foundation. Mrs. Sterling? Her assistant appeared at the door. Your husband's here. Maya smiled. Even after 2 years of marriage, her heart still skipped a beat every time someone called her Mrs. Sterling. Alexander walked into the office carrying 2 cups of coffee and a bag of tacos from the small restaurant on the corner. It had become their tradition to have lunch together whenever they could. How was the meeting with the investors? Maya asked, accepting the coffee. Great, we secured another $2 million to expand the foundation to other cities. Alexander sat down in the chair across from her desk. And you? How did the scholarship interviews go? Inspiring. I met a 16-year-old girl who wants to be an engineer, a 20-year-old young man who dreams of opening a car repair shop, and a 50-year-old woman who wants to learn computer skills. Alexander watched her speak, his eyes full of love and admiration. Maya had become a capable executive, but she had never lost her heart, her compassion, or her gift for seeing the best in people. What are you thinking about? Maya asked, noticing the look on his face. How lucky I am. Lucky? That you found me that night. That you chose to take me home instead of leaving me by the trash. Maya laughed. You weren't in the trash, you were next to it. Same thing. No, it's not. Maya stood and walked over to him. You were never trash, Alexander. You were just lost. Alexander pulled her into his lap. And you found me. And you found me too. They kissed there in the office of the foundation they had built together, surrounded by photos of the families they had helped, and thank you letters from people whose lives had been changed. Outside the window, the city stretched out to the horizon. A city where a woman who once collected trash could marry a billionaire, where true love could overcome any difference, where 2 worlds could become one when there was respect, understanding, and a whole lot of love. What did you think of Maya and Alexander's story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. And don't forget to check out more touching stories right here on the final screen.